Community policing is a program that was introduced under the Clinton administration. It was authorized and funded under the Violent Crime Act of 1994. Community policing is a theory that individual rights have broke down the moral fiber of society. It's a hodgepodge of every ideology and every religion on the planet, pretty much. There's a piece of everything in there. They're trying to make a fair and a just world for everyone, but for no one in particular. And basically what the law does at the national and international level is protect global trading rights over national and local businesses. And at the local level, communitarian law balances the rights of the individuals against the rights of the community at large. The new police are targeting average people. First, they're targeted in the meetings by the local stakeholders that'll come. They'll invite the citizens to come in and identify the problems in the neighborhood or how they're going to build a better community. It's all tied into rebuilding community. It's the same MO in Iraq as it is in the United States. A small group of paid facilitators, professional advisors come to the community and they start holding what they call either stakeholder meetings or visionings, and they want to talk about the future, and they want everyone at the meetings to help them identify the values that they'd like to maintain in the community and what the standards are in the community. And in these meetings, they also ask people to identify problems in the neighborhood, and so this is your opportunity, if you're that kind of a person, to go in and talk about that neighbor down the street that is always working on his car, or he's got a loud motorcycle that his friends are always coming over at 2 o'clock in the morning. I've heard a lot of different petty little neighborhood complaints come up in these meetings, and then they go from that point to maybe they need to investigate this person, investigate their friends a little bit more. I kind of narrowed it down to you're either an asset or you're a problem. And then if you're identified as an asset, then they'll have your specific skills and abilities. They have interviews that were designed by Jody Kurtzman and John McKnight at Northwestern University, Evanston, Illinois. It's an 11-page interview, questions, very in-depth questions, whether you know how to bathe a 6-month-old baby, if you can take care of elderly people, can you cook, can you sew, can you clean, can you vacuum, can you wash windows. It's very detailed. It also has your fraternal and political affiliations, your personal information, your home address, your age, any dreams or desires you might have about starting a business. It's very detailed. That is part of the database. They've got numerous ways of gathering the data. It's been a top priority since, the 92 Declaration at Rio came out. You'll have absolutely no private feelings, no private thoughts, no private hopes, no private dreams. The types of information that they want, it just gets more invasive with every program that I see.
It was Henry Kissinger who said that power is the greatest aphrodisiac of all. And I believe that this is what motivates these people who work behind the scenes. But there are people who actually give themselves over to the dark side, and they're well rewarded in this life.
Between 1994 and 1995, I had one of the most intimidating experiences I've ever known. It was at the time that I was going to release a news story that George Bush Sr. was responsible for the deaths of Gulf War veterans and the transfer of biologicals and chemicals to Iraq during the 1980s. And prior to doing that, I had notified his office that we were going to be releasing this information. I was working alone in my office in my home in Houston, Texas, at about midday when everybody was at work, and lo and behold, my office began to shake. It was shaking so violently, I almost had the fax machine drop the phone off of it. I couldn't imagine what was taking place, so I went out on a balcony right alongside the office. Looking up, I saw the biggest helicopter, the closest helicopter I have ever seen, hovering over the house. I called a friend of mine who knew that I was going to be doing this, going to be releasing this information, and I said, "What do I do?" And he said, well, I would get out of the house. So I went downstairs with my keys and went to open the door to the garage. And lo and behold, as I opened the garage door to back out, there was a Crown Victoria with its rear end up against my car. So there was no way that I could leave at that point. I went back upstairs. I called him, and he said, well, I think this is simply intimidation. So I learned early on that there are people that don't want information out. There are people that are not happy about people that do speak out. But I decided that fear was not going to control my life, and I've continued to tell the truth as I know it since that time.
My dad was a professional soldier, and my grandfather was a professional cop. And they were not the same job. I never, once in my life, heard my dad say anything other than, if you asked him what his job was, he would tell you that he was a professional killer. And his job was to kill enemies of the United States. And police officers do not swear to kill anyone. They swear to protect and defend. They're not the same job. When the Department of Justice and the Department of Defense merged in 1998, it's in their joint technology report, that they basically, that police and soldiers basically do the same job now. Under the legislation in 1994, the Violent Crime Act in 1994 has a lot of the new programs were embedded inside that legislation that authorized the distribution of technology and equipment that was left over from the Cold War. They got permission to start sharing it with the local police in the late 90s. The American police are working in two joint programs, one with former KGB agents and Israeli Mossad. They're going back and forth to Israel. JINSA's sponsoring some of the trips. They're calling Israel the Harvard of anti-terrorism and training American police how to assassinate potential terrorists by shooting them in the head rather than in the chest, as American cops were formerly trained. So most all of the training now, it seems to me, to be between the police and the Army has blended to the point where I don't think that there is a difference anymore. I think that it's all in name, really.
Interestingly enough, it's probably the military people that understand the dangers of posse comitatus more than anyone else. The use of the military, or integrating the military into the law enforcement establishment, is something that the military understand the danger of. And hopefully people will see this and realize it for what it is and stop it while we can.
This has been our protection against a military dictatorship. President Bush has advocated doing away with posse comitatus, using the military to establish a dictatorship in case of an emergency. What's even more significant is the leaders of the Pentagon are totally against this, saying, we are not trained for police action, we're trained for combat. We would have to change our training. The military, this is not the function of the military. But President Bush wants the ability and the power to establish a military dictatorship.
We are absolutely violating our own laws on posse comitatus, because the federalized military is not, I say again, is not authorized under posse comitatus to do civilian police work. But we're doing it. And we're doing it in a way that says, oh, well, we must, because that's the only way we'll get the job done right now. But no one in Congress has raised a hand and said, should we authorize that? Should we allow that? Is that the direction that this country is going? That we're going to have martial law because of a hurricane?